Hey guys, Charles Yeager for Tuts Plus. Today I'm going to be showing you guys a quick tip on how to easily add Christmas lights to buildings in your footage or in a picture in After Effects. It's a really easy trick and it doesn't require any third-party plugins. However, if you do have Trapcode Particular, you can refine this a little bit more, and I'll go over that near the end of the tutorial. This method works best on buildings that are kind of a medium distance away from your camera. So in this image here, I've got a condo that's pretty close up to the camera. For this effect, it doesn't look quite as real, but for this tutorial's sake, I'm going to have it closer to the camera just so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. But if your building is a little bit further in the distance, it'll help sell the effect and make it look a lot more realistic. And this effect is obviously good if you have an end tag or something on a commercial, or if you're working on a project and you want the building to obviously appear more Christmassy and have lights on it, and it doesn't. This is an easy way to do that. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, first thing I want to do is create a new composition. I'm going to call this Xmas Lights. Hit OK. Now you can drag your building into your composition. I'm going to scale this image down a little bit. Hold Shift to keep it in scale. Alright, so I got this shot of this condo here. It's obviously daytime and I need to make this night. There's a lot of tutorials that show how to do this. I'm just going to go over it really quickly. I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. I'm going to call it Night. I'm going to add the effect Tint. I'm going to set it on 50% because at nighttime, stuff's kind of desaturated. Now I'm going to add the effect Levels. I'm just going to pull this brightness down a little bit so it's not quite as blown out. And now we'll add a Curves adjustment. I'm going to go to the blue channel, pull that up. Go to the red channel and pull that down. Kind of gives you this teal color. Now I'll go back to the RGB and just kind of give it a general curve. And there we go. Now our shot looks like it's a little more nighttime, and this is going to be perfect for our Christmas lights to kind of pop off of. Now what I've created are these light sheets that are essentially full HD images that just contain, they're completely full of lights. And these kind of bokeh dots. And if I scroll through the different ones here, I've got colored, I've got yellow, and I've got them in different sizes. And these are what we're going to be using to kind of matte where we want our lights to be on this image. You can, like I said, you can download all these images with the project file on this tutorial. I'm going to make this gold, so I'm going to grab the Christmas Lights 2 PNG and I'm going to pull that down in my composition. Now you can kind of see what that looks like here. And I'm going to turn that off for the time being. I'm going to create a new solid now. Call it Matte. Hit OK. I'm going to turn off the visibility on that as well. I'm going to add the effect Stroke to that solid. Now what we're going to do is essentially create some masks on this matte layer. And where we create these masks are essentially where our lights are going to end up being. So we're going to basically trace out where we want our lights to be. So we go up here to the pen tool. And you're going to want to make sure your Roto Bezier is off. You just want to probably keep it more rigid line unless you want something that's curvy. But I'm going to have it off for this. And I'm going to go along the top of this awning here. Then I'm just going to click down here to end that. Click on my layer, hit M. We can see that I now have the masks on there for the awning. And we can do this for multiple parts of our image, and I'm going to trace this out kind of across this guardrail here. Start a new mask. Kind of follow the edge of that railing there. Come down here and click to end that mask. Click the pen tool again. Let's do another line down here. And don't worry about like plants and stuff that are in the way of these masks. We're going to fix all this later. Right now we just want to kind of give a general area of where we want our lights to be. And when I click away like this is essentially telling that mask to end that way, because if I keep clicking with that, it's going to try to close the mask, and I actually don't want it to. I just want it to be open lines here. So let's kind of do the door frame here. I'm going down about this chair because it looks like to be behind the chair there, so I'm not going to worry about that. Oh, you see there it didn't close, so I'm going to hit Control Z, click back up here and kind of click away. Now click back on the pen tool. That's going to happen from time to time. Fix this a little bit. Okay, now we kind of have some mask where we want our lights to be. This is exactly what we want. Now what this effect stroke is going to do, we're going to now go back to our matte layer. We're going to turn on the visibility for it. So now we have this mask on top of this gray solid. And we're going to go to the stroke effect. We're going to check all masks, and we're going to go down to on transparent. Now if I click this to turn off the mask visibility, we can kind of see this thin line where the stroke effect is going over those masks. What we can do is make this thicker or thinner depending on how thick or thin we want our light strings to be. In this case, I'm going to set this on probably about 3. So you can see that kind of makes those a little bit more bold. And you can pull this up as big as you want, but realistically, probably the thinner, the better, in order to make it more realistic. So that's why I'm going to leave it on about 3. And at this point, you can kind of guess what we're going to do next. Is essentially we're going to alpha matte our light layer with this stroke effect. But before we do that, obviously these lines are a little too symmetrical, a little too straight. So one thing that I always like to do in this case is add the effect roughen edges. Put that below our stroke effect, and obviously this is not the result we want. I want to set this on the border about 2. You can see that kind of gives a little bit of displacement there, a little less symmetrical, it looks a little more natural. I'm going to put the scale to about 20, so it's a little bit smaller. Okay, before I move on, I'm actually going to turn my brush size on my stroke up to about 4, just so you guys can see it a little bit better, probably from the, like I said, from the compression of the video. All right, now we can turn on the visibility for our Christmas lights layer. And we're going to go over here to track matte. We're going to set our Christmas lights layer to alpha matte. And there we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. We can kind of see how we've created an alpha matte on our lights layer with the stroke effect. So now it basically only highlights where the lights are. I'm going to set this on full so you guys can see it better. Now the lights are kind of giving off some bokeh with the lens kind of a little blown out. Definitely a little more random, which is good to help make it look realistic. Before we move on, I'm going to select the matte layer and hold shift and click the Christmas lights layer. Go to layer, pre-compose. We'll just call this lights. And now what we need to do is add some glow on top of these lights. So I'm going to type in glow. Go down to stylize here, grab the glow effect. Throw that on the lights. I like to set the glow threshold to about 80% and the glow radius to about 270. Which is pretty big here, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on the glow effect, hit Control D to duplicate it. And now you can kind of see we create this kind of haze, so it's duplicated the glow effect, which is, I'm basically going to stack these up in order to magnify the effect. On the second glow effect, I'm going to hit Control D again to duplicate it again. I'm going to set the glow threshold on this to about 7%, just to bring that down. Now we kind of have a good little gold haze going on here. I'm actually going to go back to my second glow layer, and I'm going to bring this down to about 100 on glow radius. That looks a little bit better. And before I move forward anymore, I want to make sure your project's on 8 bits per channel or 16 bits per channel. And you can see that right here. If you hold the Alt key and click, that'll change that. You want to be in one of those two. If you're in 32 bits per channel, that can work too. The results are going to look a little bit more different than this, and I'll go over that kind of closer to the end of the tutorial. All right, finally, let's add a turbulent displace. Obviously, that's not the ideal result we want right there. So I'm going to set the amount up to about 37 and the size to about 5. This is just going to give us a little bit more randomness, kind of like the strings. So the first rough and edges was more like the light bulb. So this is going to be like the light strings, kind of giving it some displacement there. We can turn this on and off. You can see the difference there. So now that we have our lights looking pretty good, we need some glow kind of bouncing off the walls here, because obviously these lights are going to be putting out light that's going to hit the walls and kind of lighten everything up in this area. So let's create a new adjustment layer. I'm going to call this bounce light. Let's add a curves effect. And now let's add a photo filter effect. I'm going to set the density of this to about 50. And what we're going to do here is we're going to click our pen tool and kind of draw a mask around where this light's going to kind of be bouncing. So basically, hit M on the keyboard, go to mask, adjust the feather of this a little bit. Come up here to our curves layer, pull the brightness of it up. Yeah. Gonna really hit this feather hard here. And there we go, it kind of gives you just an extra bit of glow and pop on top of your lights there. Kind of gives it almost a little bit of volumetric lighting. One other thing I'll touch on, like I said, the lights that are on this rail here, if you don't want them to be in front of the plants, you can just click on your light layer here, click on the mask tool, and just kind of mask around these. Doesn't have to be the cleanest thing in the world. Hit mask, go to subtract. There you go, now your lights are behind the plants, or if you have any other things that are in front of your lights. I'll go ahead and do that for all these other lights real quick. And there you go, guys. You can see what that looks like now with the plants masked out of the Christmas lights there. Makes the lights look like they're going actually behind them. Makes it look a lot more realistic. If you are working in one of the other color channels, like 32 bits per channel, I'll just show you what that looks like. It's essentially just going to add more brightness and color depth to your image. Obviously, this makes these lights now look like they're on fire, but and to some, this may even look better. You'd obviously want to dial the glow down a little bit there, so it just depends on what you're working with, but typically with video, I'm working in 16 bits per channel, but it's whatever your preference is. But you can see what a difference that makes there. If you have the plugin Trapcode in particular and you want to create your own light sheets like I've created, super easy to do. I'll show you that real quick here. Let's create a new solid, call it lights, apply particular to it. I'm going to drag it onto the timeline here a little bit. Now under our emitter, we're going to put this on a box. We're going to change our size to be the width of our composition on the X and Y axis. And now essentially just add a lot of particles. So now you can kind of see these dots, which are essentially like our light. So we turn off the alpha channel there. You can see it behind, and so now we can customize the color. Make these a blue light. You can play with the feather here of the particle. And once you get something you like, you can just go up to Composition, Save Frame As File. If I pull this up here, you can save it out as a PNG or Photoshop, either or. And once you save that out, you basically have the same kind of light image like that I was working with, so you can kind of customize your own if you want the spheres to be bigger, smaller, whatever you want to do. All right, guys, hopefully you found this quick tip useful, and this has been Charles Yeager for Tuts Plus.